The sun was dying on the horizon when they brought her to the edge of the forest. The orange light bled through the trees like the last heartbeat of day, flickering against faces carved with fear. The elders walked in silence, their feet stirring the dust of an old path that no one dared to take after sundown. Behind them, the girl stumbled, her wrists bound loosely with fiber rope, her eyes swollen from hours of pleading that fell on hearts too frightened to listen. A low wind sighed through the trees, and even the insects seemed to hold their breath. They said she had brought misfortune upon the village, that ever since she touched the forbidden river, children had fallen ill, crops had failed, and the chief's son had vanished into the night. She was the only one who had gone near the sacred waters where the ancestors were said to sleep. So they called her cursed, chosen by spirits who demanded solitude and sacrifice. In truth, no one knew what had really happened by the river that day. But in places where fear rules, truth doesn't matter, only survival does. The women wept softly as they walked, not for her, but for what she represented. The men carried torches, pretending their hands didn't tremble. Only the old shaman, stooped and nearly blind, muttered something beneath his breath, a prayer, or a warning. No one could tell. When they reached the baobab tree, the girl was pushed to her knees. The tree was enormous, older than any living soul, its roots twisting like sleeping serpents into the earth. To the villagers, it was more than a tree, it was a boundary, the final line between the human world and the realm of spirits. She looked up at them, her lips trembling. "Please," she whispered, "I did nothing wrong," but her voice broke like dry wood. The chief turned away, his jaw tight, his eyes wet. Fear makes even the strongest look away. A mother reached out as if to touch the girl's face, then quickly drew her hand back, as though even compassion could invite the curse closer. No one spoke, no one moved. The decision had already been made. The rope around her wrists was cut, and for a moment she thought they might show mercy. But instead, the shaman stepped forward, sprinkled ash over her head, and spoke in a low voice that made the forest shiver. "May the spirits claim what belongs to them. If you are innocent, they will return you." The words hung in the air like mist. Then they turned and left one by one without looking back. As the torches disappeared into the darkness, she was left with only the cold song of the forest. Night descended fast, wrapping her in shadows that breathed. The baobab loomed above her like a silent witness, its trunk covered in symbols carved long ago. Somewhere in the distance, a hyena laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that echoed like mockery. She hugged her knees to her chest, her heartbeat loud against the stillness. She wanted to scream, but fear swallowed the sound before it reached her lips. The forest smelled of wet earth and decay. Every rustle seemed to carry intent, every shadow a presence. Her grandmother had told her stories about this place, how the spirits of the wronged wandered among the trees, seeking company in their endless loneliness. She tried to remember the prayers she once recited as a child, but the words slipped away, replaced by whispers that didn't belong to her mind. Hours passed. The moon rose, pale and hesitant, painting the forest silver. She thought she saw figures moving between the trunks, too tall, too slow, too silent to be human. When she blinked, they were gone. Or perhaps they were never there. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes refused to close. She felt something watching her from the darkness, not with anger, but with curiosity, as if the forest itself was studying her. Then came the sound of faint hum, low and rhythmic, like a song without words. It drifted through the air, circling her, pulling at her heart. The trees seemed to sway in unison, though there was no wind. Her fear began to melt into something stranger, an ache, a sadness, as if she was remembering something she had forgotten long ago. Tears ran down her cheeks, not from fear, but from the strange beauty of it. She stood up slowly. Her bare feet sank into the damp soil, and for a moment she thought she saw light, soft blue, breathing from the roots of the tree. She reached out, trembling fingers brushing the bark. It was warm. Beneath her hand, something pulsed. The humming grew louder, filling her chest, her head, her very bones. She tried to pull back, but her hand wouldn't move. It was as if the tree had chosen her. Then, silence. The forest stopped breathing. The air thickened, and in that stillness, a voice not human, not earthly spoke her name. She froze. No one had called her by name since she was taken from her hut. The voice came again, softer this time, closer. She turned, but saw nothing. Her knees gave way, and she collapsed against the roots, sobbing, half from fear, half from relief. For the first time, she wasn't alone. Somewhere deep in the forest, an owl screamed a long, haunting cry that made the night tremble. The ground beneath her hands began to glow faintly, tracing patterns around her fingers, symbols she couldn't understand. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the earth itself. Then everything went black. The forest, the moon, the stars, all swallowed by a darkness that felt alive. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, the clearing was empty. The rope lay on the ground, half buried in dirt, the ash blown away by the wind. The villagers didn't speak of her again. To them, the forest had claimed what was owed. But deep among the trees, something had awakened, and its story had only begun. When she opened her eyes again, the forest was different. The sun had not yet risen, yet it was not night either. The air shimmered as though caught between two worlds. A mist hung low, curling around her arms like the breath of something unseen. Her head throbbed, her throat dry as dust. The last thing she remembered was the glow beneath the tree, the hum that had filled her chest until she could no longer breathe. Now, there was only silence, a silence so thick it felt like sound had died within it. She tried to move, but her limbs felt heavy, as if she had slept for days. The earth beneath her was damp, warm, and alive. When she pressed her palm against it, she felt a faint heartbeat, slow and deep, echoing through the soil. She blinked hard, trying to shake off the dreamlike haze. Somewhere nearby, a stream whispered over stones. It was the only sign of movement in a world that otherwise felt frozen. Her clothes were torn, her hands scratched, but her body felt strange. There was no pain. The cuts she remembered from the ropes were gone. Her skin glowed faintly, as if she had been touched by moonlight. She stood up, shaky, her breath fogging in the cool air. The baobab tree was still there, towering above her, but it no longer felt like a boundary. It felt like a doorway. Something had changed in the forest. The colors were wrong. The leaves were too green, the shadows too deep. The air was heavy with scent flowers she didn't recognize, sweet and sharp like honey and smoke. Every sound echoed longer than it should have. Even her heartbeat seemed to hum with the same rhythm she had heard before. It was as if the forest itself had swallowed her, and was waiting for her to understand its language. She began to walk. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay still. Every step felt guided, as though invisible hands were pushing her forward. The mist parted around her, revealing shapes that disappeared when she tried to focus on them. Once, she thought she saw a figure watching from behind a tree tall, with eyes like amber, but when she blinked, it was gone. The forest wasn't empty. It was watching her. As she moved deeper, the light changed. It came not from the sky but from the ground, faint blue lines weaving across roots and rocks, pulsing gently. She followed them without thinking. The air vibrated with whispers, voices she couldn't quite hear, murmuring in a language older than her bloodline. She pressed her fingers to her ears, but the sound came from inside her head, not outside it. Her name echoed again, soft, calling, patient. "Who's there?" she whispered. Her voice cracked. The forest responded with a low sigh, leaves trembling, as though exhaling. Then, from the mist, a figure appeared. It was neither man nor woman, tall and slender, its body woven from the same blue light that threaded the ground. It had no face, yet she felt its gaze pierce through her like sunlight through water. She should have run, but something in her heart kept her still. The figure raised its hand, slow and graceful. From its palm, light spilled out, scattering into tiny sparks that floated toward her. When they touched her skin, warmth spread through her body, followed by memories that weren't hers, images of rivers glowing under moonlight, voices chanting in circles, faces painted with ash and hope. She gasped, clutching her chest. The world tilted. She fell to her knees. The figure stepped closer, and with each step, the forest seemed to bow. Trees bent, branches lowered, as if paying respect. Then, in a voice that sounded like the merging of wind and water, it spoke not in words, but in meaning. "You were not abandoned." The phrase bloomed in her mind like a song. "You were chosen." Tears welled in her eyes. Chosen? For what? Her voice trembled, but the figure didn't answer. Instead, it turned, motioning for her to follow. She hesitated only a second before obeying. They walked deeper into the forest, where the light grew stronger, where the air thickened with energy so dense it made her skin buzz. Every few steps, she glimpsed other shapes, faces in the mist, hands reaching from the trees, eyes glowing from the darkness. None harmed her, all simply watched. They reached a clearing where the ground shimmered like water, though it was solid earth. In the center stood a pool, perfectly still, perfectly circular, reflecting the world above with impossible clarity. The figure gestured toward it. She approached, kneeling beside it. The reflection that looked back at her wasn't hers. The eyes were golden, the skin radiant, the hair faintly glowing, as if woven from threads of dawn. She recoiled. "What is this?" she whispered. The voice returned inside her mind, calm and resonant. "The truth beneath your skin, the part of you your people forgot." She shook her head, tears falling into the pool, rippling her reflection into fragments. "No, I'm just a girl from the river. I'm no one." The light dimmed. Then the figure knelt beside her, and for the first time, she felt warmth not of fire, but of understanding. "No one is no one," it whispered. "All blood remembers where it began." From the pool rose small orbs of light, each the size of a fingertip. They floated around her like fireflies, whispering voices within them soft overlapping, carrying sorrow and joy alike. One brushed her cheek, and she heard a woman's voice, tender and weary. "We were the first." Another touched her hand, a deeper voice murmuring, "We were forgotten." Then came the realization. These were not lights, they were memories, spirits bound to the forest, remnants of those sacrificed long before her. The cursed, the outcast, the left behind, all had become part of the land, and now, somehow, she was among them. Her breath caught. "Why me?" The figure looked toward the sky, though there was no sun to see. "Because your heart still listens." The words sank deep. She understood, even if she couldn't explain how. The curse, the abandonment, it had all been fear of the unknown. But this was something older. A covenant between humanity and nature, long broken by greed and fear. The forest had waited generations for one who would listen again. She knelt beside the pool and closed her eyes. The light moved toward her, wrapping around her shoulders, her head, her chest. She felt her heartbeat sync with the rhythm of the earth again. Images flooded her mind, the village, her people starving, the fields dying, the river drying into dust, and beneath it all, the same voice, soft and sorrowful. They took without giving. The balance must return. The warmth turned heavy. Her body trembled. She felt the pain of the earth, the wounds of trees cut, rivers poisoned, lives forgotten. It was too much. She screamed, but the sound came out as light, bursting into the air, echoing through the forest like thunder. The mist twisted violently, shapes spinning, voices crying out. Then, silence again. When she opened her eyes, the figure was gone. The pool lay still once more, and the light had dimmed to faint embers. But something had changed inside her. Her skin glowed faintly, her veins pulsed with silver light. Her fear was gone, replaced by an immense calm. She stood, steady now, breathing in the air that felt newly alive. As she walked back toward the baobab, the forest moved with her. Flowers bloomed where her feet touched. The mist parted. Animals emerged from the shadows. Unafraid antelopes, birds, even a black panther that padded beside her silently for a few steps before melting back into the trees. She felt no threat, only belonging. When she reached the great tree again, dawn had begun to break. The first rays of sunlight pierced the canopy, touching her face. She lifted her hand and saw the light refract through her skin like crystal. For a long time, she simply stood there, letting the warmth wash over her. Then, faintly, she heard her name again this time. Not from within the forest, but from beyond it. It was the voice of a child, weak, distant, calling from the direction of the village. Her heart leaped. She turned and ran. The forest seemed to open a path for her, roots sliding aside, thorns bending out of the way. The further she went, the more the world began to shift, the colors fading back to normal, the mist thinning until only sunlight remained. When she emerged from the trees, the village stood silent in the early morning light. Smoke rose lazily from the dying fires. The people were gathered near the edge, staring toward the forest as if expecting something or someone. When they saw her, a gasp rippled through the crowd. The chief dropped his staff. The women fell to their knees. No one moved closer. She stopped a few paces away, panting, her hair damp with dew, her eyes glowing faintly like polished gold. The villagers whispered her name as if afraid to speak it aloud. One woman screamed and fainted. Another began to pray. But the old shaman stepped forward, trembling, his lips parting in disbelief. "What have you seen?" he whispered. She looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "I saw the truth beneath the soil. I saw what we have forgotten." He fell to his knees, pressing his forehead to the ground. Around him, others followed, too afraid to stand before her. She felt no pride, no anger, only sadness. They had feared what they didn't understand, and now that fear had chained them to their own suffering. She walked among them, her steps silent. Wherever she passed, the ground seemed to shimmer faintly, and in her wake, flowers began to bloom. A mother held out her sick child instinctively, desperation overriding fear. The girl knelt, touched the child's forehead, and instantly, color returned to his cheeks, his small chest rising with stronger breath. A murmur of awe spread through the crowd. She stood and turned toward the fields beyond the huts. They were dry, dead from months without rain. She closed her eyes, raised her hand toward the horizon, and whispered something in a tongue that wasn't hers but felt deeply familiar. The wind shifted. Dark clouds gathered from nowhere, swirling above like summoned spirits. Within moments, rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy, drenching the cracked earth. The people wept. Some shouted her name as if she were divine. Others hid inside their huts, terrified of what they had done. She didn't look back. She simply walked to the center of the village and lifted her face to the rain, letting it wash the last of the forest's dust from her skin. Her heart felt light, but her mind carried the weight of what she had seen. As night fell again, she sat beneath the same tree where the villagers once gathered for counsel. Children approached her timidly, eyes wide with wonder. One asked if she was still human. She smiled faintly and said, "I am what I have always been. Only now, I remember who I am." The shaman approached once more, kneeling beside her. "They will worship you now," he said quietly. "They will build shrines. They will pray to you." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I do not want their worship. I want their understanding." But deep down, she knew the balance between fear and faith was fragile. For every blessing came a burden. The forest had given her a gift, and gifts from the unseen world always come with a price. That night, as the village celebrated the returning rain, she stood alone by the river's edge. The water shimmered in the moonlight, reflecting her glowing eyes. She knelt and whispered to the current. Her words carried softly into the darkness. "I will not forget." Behind her, the wind rustled through the grass. Somewhere far away, in the forest's heart, a faint hum began again, the same low rhythm that had called to her before. The spirits were awake, watching, waiting. The balance had begun to shift, and though she did not yet know it, her return had marked the beginning of something far greater than any blessing, something that would test the line between miracle and curse. The days that followed her return were drenched in wonder. The village that once cast her out now bowed in awe. Wherever she walked, the air seemed lighter, the soil richer, the wind calmer. Crops that had withered for months sprouted green again. The river that had turned to mud began to flow, cool and clear, like a wound closing after years of bleeding. The people whispered her name, not with hatred now, but reverence. Some called her blessed, others feared she was no longer one of them. But no one dared to look into her eyes for too long, for in their golden shimmer, there was something that reminded them of the forest's night, endless, sacred, and unknowable. At night, she dreamt. Dreams that weren't dreams at all, but memories that didn't belong to her. In them, she walked barefoot through halls of light beneath the roots of the baobab tree. There were voices chanting in harmony, deep and rhythmic, echoing like the heartbeat of the earth itself. And at the center of that light stood the same figure she had seen before, the being woven of blue fire. It would not speak in words, but in images. Rivers that glowed with life, forests breathing, people and nature intertwined like veins in the same body. Then came the images of ruin axes, cutting trees, blood-soaking soil, fire swallowing the night sky. Every vision ended with the same whisper: the balance must return. One night, unable to bear the weight of it, she rose and left her hut. The moon hung low, silver and swollen, and the rain had washed the world clean. The forest called to her again, not with sound, but with memory. She walked without hesitation, her bare feet finding the same hidden path as before. The villagers saw her from afar, the faint light trailing behind her steps, and none dared follow. When she entered the forest, it welcomed her. The mist rolled back, and the trees whispered her name like an old song. The air was warmer here, the same hum vibrating softly beneath her skin. She reached the ancient baobab and laid her hand against its bark. "I have done as you asked," she murmured. "They are healed. They believe again. But tell me, what am I now?" The earth trembled, not in violence, but as if waking. The roots beneath her feet pulsed faintly with light, spreading outward like veins of silver. Then the world fell silent. The mist thickened, and out of it, the blue figure appeared again, this time clearer, more human in shape. Its presence both comforting and terrifying. Its voice came not from its mouth, but from everywhere at once. "You have fulfilled the first part of the covenant." She frowned, her heart heavy. Covenant, when life was taken, life was owed. When hearts turned from the earth, the bond was broken. You have restored what was lost, but only in part. I don't understand. The being stepped closer, and in its glow she saw thousands flickering within it like trapped souls, each one watching her silently. The balance demands more than mercy. It demands memory. She felt a chill run through her. What must I do? You must remember what they forgot. You must carry their truth, even if it breaks you. Before she could ask what that meant, the ground beneath her split open, revealing a tunnel of light that spiraled deep into the earth. She hesitated only a moment before the unseen force pulled her in. There was no falling, only weightlessness, a slow descent through layers of time. The light shifted from gold to blue to black, until she stood once more on solid ground. It was not earth as she knew it. The air shimmered with color, the sky a ceiling of glowing roots. Rivers of light flowed between towering stones carved with symbols older than language. At the center of this underground world was a throne not of gold or wood, but of intertwined roots and bones. Upon it sat a woman draped in leaves in shadow, her eyes glowing with the same fire that lived in the forest's heart. The girl fell to her knees instinctively. The woman spoke, her voice both beautiful and dreadful. Child of two worlds, you have crossed the threshold. Her throat tightened. Who are you? I am the memory that feeds the soil, the woman replied. Once, they called me Mimo, mother of breath. The humans knew me as the forest's spirit, guardian of balance, but they forgot me, as they forgot their own beginning. The girl trembled. Why did you bring me here? The spirit's gaze softened. Because you listened. Because you carried our pain when others turned away. And because now, you must decide what kind of bridge you will become, between what was and what will be. Mimo raised her hand, and the rivers of light rose like serpents, wrapping around the girl. Images flashed before her, eyes villages burning, forests stripped bare, spirits fading into ash. Then came another vision, people living in harmony again, planting where they took, praying to the wind and river as they once did. The contrast tore through her heart. She gasped, collapsing to the ground. You want me to save them? The spirit's voice echoed like thunder muffled by water. No one can save what refuses to remember. You cannot heal them by blessing alone. Balance requires loss. The word struck her like a blow. Lasmu's eyes dimmed. For every seed that grows, another must fall. For life to flourish, something must be given back. You have been given their blessing, but their fate now lies in your hands. Choose carefully. Before she could answer, the light surged. The world blurred. The voice faded, leaving only one final whisper. When the rain turns to fire, the choice will come. She woke at the base of the baobab, her body trembling, her skin cold despite the humid air. Dawn was rising again, painting the forest in gold, but she felt no warmth. Her veins still glowed faintly beneath her skin. Around her, the ground was scattered with strange markings, circles, symbols, spirals carved deep into the dirt as if by invisible hands. She stared at them, feeling both awe and dread. That day, when she returned to the village, the people cheered. The crops had doubled overnight. The river teemed with fish. The children played in the mud, their laughter echoing through the morning air. Yet, deep inside her, unease grew. The shaman approached her, his old eyes wary. The gods are kind, he said, but their gifts are never without a price. She looked toward the horizon. Dark clouds gathered, though no storm had been foretold. The wind smelled of something unfamiliar, smoke, maybe, or ash. That night, her dreams returned. But they were different now. The spirits no longer sang, they screamed. She saw the same forest, but burning. The baobabs split by lightning, rivers boiling, the faces of her people, terrified, reaching for her as if she were the only light left. And above them, Emo's voice echoed, when the rain turns to fire, the choice will come. She woke drenched in sweat. The air was still, the night silent, but far in the distance, a red glow flickered beyond the trees. She rose, her heart pounding, and climbed the small hill outside the village. From there, she saw it, the forest, her forest, burning. Flames climbed high into the night, devouring the sacred trees. She ran, barefoot, through the dark, the cries of the villagers following her. When she reached the tree line, the heat nearly knocked her back. The same forest that had embraced her now screamed in agony. Sparks flew into the sky like dying stars. Animals fled in terror. She dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. No, please, stop. The fire roared louder, answering her plea with fury. She raised her hands toward the flames, and for a moment, they paused suspended in air, trembling like living things. Then, from within the inferno, she saw it, a figure, cloaked in fire, walking toward her. It was not Mumo, it was something else, darker, heavier, older. Its eyes burned with hatred, and when it spoke, the world itself seemed to recoil. You brought balance, it hissed. Now bear its cost. She stumbled backward. Who are you? I am the shadow of what they took. I am the hunger left when faith dies. You woke me when you opened the covenant. The flames swirled, shaping themselves into human forms, warriors, hunters, chiefs, the ancestors. Their faces were twisted with pain and rage. We gave to the land, they cried, but they forgot us. They broke the bond, and now they must pay. She covered her ears, but their voices were inside her head. No, you can't hurt them. They didn't know. Knowledge does not cleanse debt, the shadow growled. Blood feeds the roots. It always has. The air trembled, the fire spread faster, curling toward the village. She screamed, raising her hands, and light burst from her palms, pure and blinding. The flames recoiled, but only for a moment. The shadow laughed, its voice shaking the trees. Your light cannot undo what must be done. You are the bridge, child of balance. Choose, protect them, and the forest dies. Protect the forest, and they perish. There is no peace between hunger and memory. She fell to her knees, sobbing, her tears sizzling as they hit the burning earth. Around her, the spirits of light appeared again, the same gentle forms that had once embraced her. They surrounded her, humming softly, pleading silently. The fire spirits hissed and lunged forward. The world became a storm of light and flame. In that moment, she understood what Mimo meant by balance. There could be no life without loss, no creation without surrender. Her heart shattered, but her will solidified. She stood, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Then let me be the offering." The shadow paused, its burning eyes narrowing. "You would give yourself. If one life can save both, let it be mine." The forest fell silent. Even the fire hesitated. Then the shadow nodded once. So be it. Light erupted from her body, spreading in waves across the land. The flames dissolved into ash, the trees stilled, the rivers cooled. The fire spirits screamed as they were drawn into her, vanishing one by one until only silence remained. When it was over, the night returned calm, clean, untouched. The forest stood whole once more, but she was gone, where she had knelt. The earth glowed faintly, and in its center bloomed a single flower, a white blossom with petals like soft flame. The villagers found it the next morning. The shaman wept, knowing what it meant. From that day onward, rain never failed, and famine never returned. The people built a shrine around the baobab, and every year, they laid offerings of food and flowers beneath its roots. They said that on quiet nights, when the moon was full, you could still see her figure among the trees glowing softly. Neither spirit nor human, but something in between. And though generations would pass, and names would fade, the forest never forgot her sacrifice, for she had become what the balance demanded, both memory and mercy, both the curse and the cure. The morning after the great fire, the village woke to silence. No smoke rose, no ash fell. The air was too still, too clean. The villagers emerged one by one, stepping carefully onto soil that had burned only hours before, yet now felt cool beneath their feet. The forest stood untouched, as if fire had never touched it. Trees that should have been blackened with soot glistened with dew, their leaves shimmering with unnatural brightness. The birds sang softly, but even their song seemed deeper, almost reverent. At the edge of the village, the shaman stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the horizon where light rippled faintly across the treetops. His lips trembled as he whispered her name. "She is gone," he said to no one in particular. And yet, she is not. The people gathered around him, eyes wide with both relief and fear. Children clung to their mothers, men murmured prayers. No one understood what had happened. They had seen the forest burn, had heard the screams carried on the wind, and then nothing. The flames had vanished, replaced by peace too complete to be natural. It was as if the world had been rewritten overnight. By noon, strange signs began to appear. The river glowed faintly at its bends, like moonlight trapped beneath the surface. The sky shimmered gold even when the sun was hidden. Animals that had fled returned, not in fear, but in calm, walking among the people, as if they no longer recognized a difference between human and beast. A deer approached the center of the village and lay down before the chief's hut, resting its head on the ground, eyes closed. Then the rain came, soft at first, gentle as breath. It smelled of flowers and something else, something sweet, almost sacred. The drops that touched skin left faint marks of light that lingered for moments before fading. When the villagers drank from the puddles, they swore the water tasted alive, filled with warmth that spread through their chests like fire. But as evening descended, the first whisper spread. A hunter who had ventured near the baobab returned pale and trembling. He claimed to have seen her standing at the edge of the forest, her body faintly glowing, her eyes distant. She looked at me, he said, his voice shaking, but she did not speak. She smiled, and the ground bloomed where she stood. The shaman's heart pounded. He knew what the hunter had seen could not be a ghost. Ghosts didn't bring life, they took it. This was something else, something between spirit and human. That night, he gathered the elders beneath the same tree where they had once condemned her. The moon shone silver through the branches, casting strange patterns across their faces. We must not speak her name carelessly, he warned. She walks still, but not as she was. The forest has claimed her, and through her, it claims us all. An old woman, her back bent like a bow, shook her head. If she lives, should we not welcome her? The shaman's eyes darkened. Would you welcome thunder into your home? Blessings may turn if we do not respect their cost. But not everyone shared his caution. Some villagers went to the forest carrying offerings, fruits, flowers, woven cloth. They placed them at the roots of the baobab, and whispered prayers for health, for rain, for love, and to their astonishment, their wishes came true. Crops grew double overnight. The barren were blessed with children. The sick recovered without medicine. Word spread beyond the valley. People from neighboring villages came to see the spirit maiden, as they began to call her. They came bearing gifts and songs, kneeling before the baobab with trembling devotion. For days, the air buzzed with joy. But beneath that joy, something darker stirred a fear, disguised as awe. The shaman noticed it first. The blessings never stopped, but neither did they rest. Rain came when none was needed, flooding the fields. The fish in the river multiplied until they died in heaps along the banks. Children born during the sacred moonlight had golden eyes that never blinked. One night, a mother claimed to hear her dead husband's voice whispering from her newborn's mouth. The line between miracle and madness began to blur. The shaman knew then that the covenant was incomplete. The balance she had died for was still tipping, only now, toward excess, instead of absence. He prayed under the baobab for guidance, but the forest gave no answer. Only silence, only wind, and sometimes, in that wind, the faintest echo of her voice. Days turned to weeks. Then, one evening, when the moon was red and heavy, a strange light appeared in the sky. It drifted slowly above the forest, pulsing like a heartbeat. The villagers gathered outside their huts, their faces lit by its glow. It grew brighter, spreading warmth through the air until the whole valley was bathed in gold. Then, without sound or warning, it descended right into the center of the forest. The earth trembled, the air crackled with static, and from the darkness emerged a figure. It was her. She stepped into the village barefoot, her hair flowing like ink, her eyes glowing faintly with the same golden hue that had haunted their dreams. Her skin shimmered with a light that wasn't quite earthly. The villagers fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. Some whispered her name, others dared not speak at all. She smiled gently. Do not fear. Her voice was soft, but it carried like thunder. I have returned because the balance is not yet whole. The shaman stepped forward, trembling. Child of the forest, he whispered, what more can be done? You have given yourself, you have calmed the fire. What remains to be restored? Her gaze drifted past him toward the baobab. The world breathes unevenly, she said. It heals too fast. It gives without being asked. The balance must be guided, or the gift will consume itself. He bowed his head. Then guide us, teach us. She smiled again, though it was a sad smile. I cannot stay long. The world I belong to pulls me back each time I cross. She reached out, her hand resting lightly on the shaman's forehead. He gasped as images flooded his mind, visions of rivers pulsing like veins, mountains breathing, the earth itself alive and aware. He saw her heart glowing like a small sun, beating in rhythm with the world's pulse. When she withdrew her hand, he fell to his knees. You are no longer one of us, he whispered. You are the voice of the forest. She nodded faintly. And yet I am also what it remembers of you. The people wept, reaching for her, but she raised her hand and the wind stilled them. Do not worship me, remember me, that is enough. Then, turning to the baobab, she began to sing. It was not a song of this world. The melody flowed like water, soft and unending, and as it filled the air, the forest shimmered. The leaves glowed faintly, the ground breathed, and every creature in the valley paused to listen. When the last note faded, the earth exhaled. The wind carried her words far beyond the horizon. Balance is not peace, she whispered. It is the space between giving and taking. Do not seek blessings without burden, nor life without sacrifice. Remember me, and you will never lose your place. The light around her brightened until it was almost unbearable. The people shielded their eyes, crying out her name, and then she was gone. In her place, at the foot of the baobab, lay a circle of white petals glowing faintly under the moon. The shaman picked one up, holding it to his chest. She has become the wind, he murmured. The years that followed became known as the time of the glowing rain. The valley flourished beyond measure, but always with balance. When the rivers swelled, the wind calmed them. When drought came, clouds gathered within days. The people learned to give before taking, to thank before asking. Every harvest, they offered the first fruit to the Baha, not out of fear, but out of memory. Sometimes, on nights when the forest sang low, a faint figure could be seen dancing among the trees barefoot, golden-eyed, her laughter like rain on stone. The children would whisper, "She watches us." The elders would bow their heads and reply, "She remembers us." And in the quiet heart of the forest, beneath the ancient baobab, the roots pulsed faintly, glowing in time with the earth's slow, eternal heartbeat, carrying the memory of the girl they once abandoned, who had returned not with vengeance, but with blessings wrapped in sorrow, for she had become what no one else dared to be. The living bridge between the mortal and the divine, the song that would echo long after her people were gone. Seasons passed, and the valley forgot the taste of hunger. The land that once cracked under drought now overflowed with green. Rivers that had thinned to silver threads ran fat with life. Trees bore fruit even out of season. Women no longer wept for barren wombs. The old grew strong again, their wrinkles softening, as though time itself had begun to pity them. At dawn, a mist always rolled down from the forest, shimmering faintly, leaving dew that glittered like glass. The villagers called it her breath. They said it came from the spirit maiden's blessings, from her eternal song that hummed beneath the soil. Children played in that mist, laughing as it clung to their skin like gentle light. Even the animals walked among the people without fear, grazing beside huts, birds perching on rooftops to sing at sunrise. It was paradise, or so they believed. Each morning, the shaman would stand at the center of the village, raise his staff to the sky, and murmur prayers of gratitude. The people knelt, repeating his words until the air itself seemed to vibrate with praise. They spoke her name softly, now no longer with terror, but devotion. The girl they had once abandoned had become the guardian of their existence. Her story was told to every child, her image carved into wood, painted on walls, whispered before every meal. But blessings, when left unchecked, have a way of turning into chains. The first sign came quietly. A man named Nadi went to hunt in the forest one morning and never returned. His wife waited 3 days before she went searching. When she found him, he was kneeling beside the baobab, eyes open, body untouched, but his heart had stopped. His skin shimmered faintly, like the river under moonlight. The shaman examined him and whispered, "He has been called." They buried him in silence. Weeks later, more vanished. Always the same, gone at dawn, found days later, near the forest, untouched, peaceful, glowing faintly as if death itself had become divine. Some said they had been chosen. Others whispered that the forest was reclaiming what it had given. But no one dared speak of fear not aloud. How could they, when the land was still so generous? One night, the rain came earlier than expected, soft at first, then relentless. It did not stop for days. The river swelled, spilling into fields, drowning crops. The people ran to the shaman, desperate. He stood in the storm, his robes plastered to his skin, calling her name into the howling wind. Spirit of balance, hear us, spare us. A bolt of lightning split the sky, striking the bay. For a heartbeat, the world turned white. When the light faded, the trees stood untouched, but its bark glowed with faint patterns that pulsed like veins. The rain stopped instantly. The shaman fell to his knees, his heart pounding. "She hears us," he whispered, but the look in his eyes betrayed unease. After that night, people began to dream of her again, but differently. They no longer saw her gentle smile. They saw her standing in the forest, her eyes dim, her face unreadable. her voice would echo in their minds. Do you remember me? Do you remember the promise? And when they woke, something in them had changed. They moved slower, their voices grew softer. Some forgot their own names, calling themselves the keepers. They spent hours sitting near the baobab, listening to whispers no one else could hear. Soon, a pattern emerged. Those who benefited most from the blessings were the first to be claimed. The rich harvesters, the healed, the mothers whose children had been born under the golden rain. They began to vanish one by one, walking into the forest and never returning. The people's joy curdled into dread. The shaman tried to warn them. The balance demands return, he said. We have taken too much, but no one listened. Why should they? The earth still fed them. The rivers still sang. They built a shrine larger than any before, carved her face into stone, and offered gifts of gold, oil, and livestock. They prayed louder, desperate to please her, but in their fear, they forgot the one lesson she had given them, to give before taking. As the offerings grew extravagant, so too did the silence from the forest. The wind no longer sang. The animals stopped approaching the village. The mist that once glowed now rolled in heavy and gray, thick enough to choke. Those who walked through it swore they heard voices soft, distant, repeating her last words, do not seek blessings without burden. Then came the night of the second fire. It began with light soft and golden, spilling from the forest like dawn arriving too early. The villagers cheered, thinking it was her return. They gathered, singing her name, but the light brightened until it burned their eyes. The air shimmered with heat, the ground trembling underfoot. The shaman ran forward, shouting for them to fall back. But his voice was swallowed by the wind. The light exploded outward in silence, engulfing everything. For a moment, it felt like the whole world had stopped, and then darkness. When the villagers opened their eyes, they found themselves surrounded by a strange glow. Every tree, every hut, every person glowed faintly with the same golden shimmer that once belonged only to her. The people gasped, touching their arms, their faces. The shaman's heart sank. He understood what it meant. The blessing had spread too far. It had become a fever. That night, the villagers could not sleep. Their skin buzzed with warmth, their veins glowing faintly in the dark. Some laughed, saying they were chosen at last. Others cried, fearing they had become part of her. The shaman sat alone beneath the baobab, whispering prayers that went unanswered. Above him, the stars seemed dimmer than before. At dawn, he rose and walked into the forest. The mist parted for him, silent and heavy. The deeper he went, the more the light around him pulsed, like breathing. When he reached the clearing where the pool once stood, he froze. It was back. The same pool of still water, glowing faintly, reflecting nothing but the canopy above. He approached slowly, heart pounding, and whispered, Spirit Maiden, if you hear me, tell me what to do. The water rippled, though there was no wind. From its depths, her reflection appeared calm, distant, sorrowful. She spoke softly, her voice echoing in his mind. The balance must choose. He fell to his knees. Tell me how. I am only a man. Her reflection reached toward him, and for an instant, the surface broke. A single droplet rose and landed on his hand, glowing faintly before sinking into his skin. A voice followed, one not hers, but his own, speaking words he didn't remember knowing. To restore the world, one must remember its pain. He understood then, the balance was not about gifts or punishments, it was about memory. The people had forgotten what it meant to struggle, to need, to pray from emptiness. Without that, even blessings turned hollow. He returned to the village, his face pale but resolved. The people gathered, their golden skin shimmering in the morning sun. We have been given too much, he said, and in taking without gratitude, we have cursed ourselves. They shouted in protest. How can blessings be a curse? He pointed toward the forest. Because they do not belong only to us, they belong to everything. To keep them, we must give back. They refused. They were afraid. So the shaman did what no one else dared. He took a blade, pressed it to his palm, and let his blood fall onto the soil. Take this, he whispered to the earth, and remember us kindly. The ground trembled, the wind howled, the golden glow faded from their bodies like sand slipping through fingers. The mist lifted, the river calmed, and the true balance returned. When the storm cleared, the shaman's body was still. His eyes, open, reflected the faintest shimmer of gold before dimming. The people wept, realizing too late what he had done. But from that day forward, The blessings remained not as excess, but as harmony. The rains came when needed, the crops grew in their time, life resumed its rhythm, no longer forced, no longer unnatural. The villagers learned to give offerings not of gold, but of gratitude. They told the story to every child that blessings without humility breed ruin. And sometimes, when the wind carried the scent of rain and the trees swayed just so, they could hear her voice, again soft, distant, almost smiling. Remember the balance. In that whisper lived everything she had become, the girl they once left to die, who had turned pain into mercy and mercy into wisdom, the one who had crossed life and spirit not for glory, but for remembrance. And though generations would come and go, though the carvings of her face would fade beneath moss and time, her story would linger in the soil, in the rivers, in every drop of rain that fell upon the valley, for she was never just a ghost. She was the pulse beneath every living thing, the echo of what it means to give, to lose, and to live again, to be continue.